Somebody give me a wave if you can all see me. Hopefully I'm reconnected now and you can all hear and see. All right, so let's start over. I'm your new director and I'm still figuring out how to use Facebook. All right, so anyway, I don't know how much you guys heard if you're watching on my own private page, but we can go back and I can post that later too. So anyway, I just wanted to let you guys know that I'm really excited to be taking the reins, and my background in health and safety has really given me a great opportunity to talk to you guys tonight about PPE, about masks, about respirators, about what we're being told to do and mandated to do that makes absolutely no sense for PPE experts like myself. So my background in OSHA, safety, health, and compliance, working with PPE, I've done hundreds of PPE tests. I've done hundreds of environmental situational site analysis, hazardous materials analysis, waste operations, dealing with hazardous chemicals and pathogen testing, pathogen protection, and viron protection. So there's a lot of science that you are not hearing, and there's a lot of information that you guys are not getting. So I just wanted to take the time after the Justin Barkley show today. I started mentioning that when I hopped on the wrong page, but I just started mentioning that the Justin Barkley show was really successful this morning. And so we got a lot of requests to do another one. So here we are tonight. If you didn't have a chance to see that, I would suggest that you go on Wood Radio, get on their Facebook page, and they do have it up and posted. I think you have to go about halfway through. I came on about minute 27, I think, 27 or 28. But the great thing about that is that Kristen, if you guys didn't hear this in the beginning, I'm just going to say it again. Kristen Megan, who is another EHS professional, was on there with me today, and we really played off each other very well. She is also an environmental health and safety PPE professional, does testing for a living, and so basically we're the ones who tell the medical professionals what they need to be wearing as far as PPE. We're the ones that look at the virus, the bacteria, the pathogen, the hazardous chemical, whatever it might be in the environment that's dangerous to them, and we're the ones that do the testing. We're the ones that recommend what type of mask should you be wearing, what type of respirator, what's the airflow that you need. Do you need a powered air purified respirator, or is an N95 sufficient? We're the one that tells the medical professionals what they need as far as pathogen protection, oxygen airflows, carbon dioxide output, things like that. So what you're seeing is a lot of medical professionals getting up and telling you that you need to be wearing face masks, face coverings, and you're also hearing them say things like, we're working in surgical masks all day, and my oxygen airflow is just fine, my CO2 output is just fine. And so people don't know what to believe. And the problem is we're living in an information age. There is so much information out there that is available to everybody that nobody who works outside of the field of medicine, infectious disease control, the biology, the virology, the PPE testing, nobody that works outside of those fields really can understand that information, because there's a lot of training. There are years of education and training and certifications and field practice and all of that goes into this. So how can I possibly explain to you what we're seeing as an OSHA authorized OSHA instructor, as an authorized OSHA consultant, as somebody who has worked in compliance, regulatory control, works with the OSHA standards, understands the PPE and the testing? How can I possibly explain to somebody in a Facebook post all of the technology, the science, and the environmental hazards with pathogens and chemicals and things like that in just a Facebook post? So I've stopped trying to explain that, basically, because I just get into arguments with people, and then they'll go online with all the information that's out there, and then they'll just copy a little, this is what OSHA says. And I'm thinking, yeah, I'm very well aware of what OSHA says. I'm an authorized OSHA instructor. I get all that information before y'all do. I get all the insider information. And so part of the problem today, I'm seeing a lot of the comments coming up about OSHA. So, and yes, I'm not OSHA, but I am authorized through OSHA. So, the training is the same. It's just that I own my own company. I'm not an employee of OSHA, but we go through the same training. So I know what the inspectors are looking for. I actually do the education. I actually train on the OSHA standards and the regulations. I actually go into the courtroom and defend my clients against inappropriate or improperly cited regulations, because I know the regulations inside and out, backwards and forwards, and I know the intent of the law, the spirit in which those regulations were written. So when we're working with all of this and all this information is out there, because like I said, we're living in the information age, it's really difficult for people to put all of that information together and come to the right conclusion, because you don't have the education behind it or the field experience or the knowledge to connect all the dots. So that's what I'm here to do. And one of the things that I'm just going to tell you is that a lot of health professionals, and many of you know this because many of you watching work in the health profession. Many of you are nurses, maybe some of you are doctors, EMTs, paramedics, lab techs, whatever. There are a lot of people that I'm hearing from, because I do work in the medical field as well. I am emergency trained. I'm an emergency technologist. I've taught emergency medicine, outdoor emergency care for many years. I'm also a strategic partner with the Red Cross. So I teach all that, first aid to emergency medicine. So I'm very, very familiar with medicine, with body, the biology of our bodies, physiology. I understand virology, immunology, viruses, all of that. So when you're hearing things, when a doctor gets up and says something, a lot of it you have to remember is the pressure that they are under. Honestly, they're afraid to speak up. They're going to lose their job if they do. They don't have any choice. They have to go along with the mask requirement. They have to go along with the narrative. And I'm hearing this from so many people, and so many of you out there know, because you work in these fields. You can't say anything. So a lot of it too is, I own my own company. I don't work for somebody who can fire me. And I'm not afraid to speak up. I'm not afraid to speak the truth, come what may. That's just my personality. So that's why I agreed to do these, because we need to educate people on the facts, on the truth, from somebody who is an EHS professional. I am an environmental health and safety professional. I am a PPE expert. That's been my field for 20 years. So I just want to let you know, though, that don't be too hard on the doctors and the nurses and the medical staff and the medical professionals, because they're just doing their jobs. They're being told that they have to mask up. They have to work in masks every day, and they don't necessarily agree with it, and they know they can't breathe very well, and they don't like it, and it's giving them headaches, and it's making them nauseated. But they can't afford to lose their jobs. Where are they going to go that they don't have to wear a mask? So I'm trying to be very considerate and very supportive of the healthcare professionals that have to do what they're being told. They have to follow the narrative. They don't have a choice. My goal, though, is to give people the education about why this is not right, so that we can work together as Michiganders to repeal this law. If we can work on the narrative, changing the narrative that this isn't right, it's not healthy, we need to repeal the 1945 law that the governor relied on to override the legislature, then all of this state of emergency and all these her executive powers are gone immediately. I just heard today that the state of Illinois, the Supreme Court in Illinois, did exactly that. And so the state of Illinois, no, maybe it wasn't the Supreme Court. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. I heard a court ruled against the governor, but it may not have been the Supreme Court. I don't want to state something that's not quite accurate. So I did hear, though, today that one of the courts ruled against the governor and that the state of emergency is no longer in effect. So technically that means the state of Illinois is open. Of course, he's going to repeal it, but we'll see what happens. So if we can get this 1945 law repealed, that means the minute it's repealed, we're open, we're unlocked. And that's why this Stand Up Michigan to Unlock Michigan campaign is so important that Garrett's been pushing all day. We opened it up today, and we've already got thousands of you on the group. It's awesome. And that tells me that there's a lot of energy out there right now. And so if we can coordinate our efforts and we can work together and get this petition out there, then we can quickly unlock this state, and none of this will be an issue anymore. But in the meantime, what my concern is, my biggest concern, to be honest with you, is our kids. Because, of course, I'm concerned about all of you having to work in masks too, because you all know you can't breathe. You all know you don't feel good. You come home feeling very fatigued and tired, and you have a sore throat, you have a headache. I have a daughter who experienced the same thing. She was actually fired from her job because she could not work in a mask, and she spoke up about it. So there is a lot of crap going on that we have to deal with and we have to take on. However, let's talk about the facts with masks. All right, so first of all, we need to, you understand, what is going on in the world and all of that kind of thing, and you understand that there's a real problem here and we need to repeal this. But knowing my background and knowing where I'm coming from, I just want to give you guys a couple of definitions first that might help you understand this, because most people don't. And you're hearing all these definitions of things like PPEs being thrown around, and everybody's talking about PPEs. And so I want to explain to you, PPE means personal protective equipment. And personal protective equipment is not a face cloth. It's not a face, just a piece of cloth over your mouth and nose. Okay, personal protective equipment is actually regulated. It has to be NIOSH approved. It is tested, and that is not what a face covering over your mouth and nose is. So what's the problem with this? They're treating it like it's a respirator, right? And a respirator is actually, it's a purifying piece of equipment that filters. It's a filtering face piece that filters the air. Okay, it's very tight fitting, and there's lots of different types of respirators and lots of different outputs, and I'm not going to get into all the technicalities of that right now, but I just want you to understand a couple of terms and definitions because they're inaccurate. When everybody tells you to put on your PPEs, that does not mean, your homemade face mask. But so just right there, that should tell you just the language that they're using. They're confused about the language. They don't even know the basics of PPE. But again, these are medical doctors. They are trained in medicine. They are not PPE experts. They do not understand the science and the testing behind what we are telling them they need to do. So when they get off a little bit and they stand up there and they tell you you need to mask up for your own protection against this particular pathogen, they have no idea what they're talking about, because this particular pathogen is so tiny. This virus is really, really small. It is 0.125 microns. And even an N95 respirator, which is another definition I need to throw at you, even an N95 true respirator cannot filter out a coronavirus COVID-19 particulate. They go down to the smallest size that an N95 mask will filter is 0.3 microns. So even a true tight-fitting sealed respirator cannot prevent this virus transmission either way. So when you're being told to put on this face mask, you need to understand it is completely ineffective against disease transmission. So just understand also my concern coming at this is what that also does to you. So not only is it not effective in preventing disease transmission, it is also hurting you because we haven't tested you. I have not done a risk analysis or a risk assessment on you. I don't know your airflow, your intake, your output, your CO2 output, but yet I'm telling you to cover your mouth and nose all day and then go do your work, talk, work, everything, right? Kids, think about kids. How much they run around and how much their little heart rates are beating and they're breathing hard. And then we cover the mouth and the nose. That is very dangerous. In fact, this is the reason that OSHA instituted the respirator standard in the first place, because we have killed people by putting them in face coverings, covering the mouth and nose, and telling them to work all day. We've killed people because of that. We've given them heart attacks. So OSHA actually created a respirator standard that if you're going to cover somebody's mouth and nose and require them to work all day that way, then you have to do a medical evaluation first. You have to do a fit test. You have to make sure that there's no breakthrough. So this is an actual OSHA standard. But the intent of the law, the intent behind the law was that we don't cover the mouth and the nose. Okay, so understanding that, because it's not healthy. You're not getting in enough oxygen, and when you exhale that carbon dioxide, you're not able to get it out. So you're really just breathing in and you're keeping too much CO2 in the body, which causes hypercapnia, which is a buildup of CO2 in the blood. And that causes other issues. So hypercapnia, when you have a toxic buildup of CO2 in the blood, it actually causes your blood to become very toxic and acidic. And that causes your immune system to be suppressed. So it's important that we have good oxygen intake and good CO2 output, right? Those two things are very important for us. If God wanted our mouth and nose to be covered, we wouldn't have been born with a nose that can breathe air in and a mouth that can exhale out, right? So just stop and think about it from a common sense perspective. So, okay, understanding that, let's talk about, we understand PPE now, what that is, and how that term is being so thrown around by all these doctors because they're not PPE experts. They don't even really know, they don't even really get it. Then everybody has been handing out these N95 masks like they're candy, right? Well, that right there is illegal. And OSHA actually has cited clients of mine for putting their people in an N95 respirator, which let me just clarify that term. An N95 respirator is a respirator that has a tight seal around the mouth and the nose. So it's got an elastomeric seal, and it does cause a pressure difference on the inside of the mask and the outside of the mask. So this is why we have to do testing. We have to do a medical evaluation, okay? Because we don't know that if we put you in something that covers your mouth and your nose tightly like that, if you're going to have cardiopulmonary stress. So we have to do a medical evaluation on you. And I've seen people get lightheaded, and like Kristen and I were talking about, we've seen people pass out, get lightheaded, can't even go through that, just the medical evaluation. So imagine if we made them work all day like that. Well, we would give them a heart attack, and that's actually what happens. So what's the deal? Why is OSHA now turning a blind eye to this? Because this has been my big issue. OSHA used to cite people for violating the respiratory standard, for putting people in N95 mask without doing the whole respirator program requirements and meeting all the elements of a respirator program, which is, first of all, we have the medical evaluation, then we have the fit test, then we have the documentation and the annual evaluation. It's a lot. It's a lot to follow a respirator program, and a lot of people have a tough time meeting all those requirements. So they just hand out an N95 respirator, and people get to work. At least they're not breathing in the dust, but at the same time, we could definitely have problems because that person may not be medically fit enough to work with their mouth and nose covered all day. So do you see the problem here? OSHA has cited people for putting their employees in N95 masks, but not following the respirator program. Today, it's 180 degrees different. They're violating their own standards because everybody's passing out these N95 masks. A lot of people are wearing N95 masks. Some people don't even realize it's an N95 mask. They just think it's a dust mask. And then OSHA is being told by our governor, who has weaponized this agency, to go on site, do inspections, and ask to see the COVID-19 plan. They don't care if you're working in an N95 mask. They just want to know if you have your COVID-19 plan. If you don't have your plan, here's your citation. And they see people working in N95 masks, and they don't say a word about it. They're not asking to see the respirator program. They're not asking to see the medical fit test or the respirator fit testing, anything, nothing. So I'm saying the same thing as some of these comments I'm seeing. Where is OSHA in all of this? Why are they taking the exact opposite approach right now and actually violating their own standards? It's crazy. And all of us in this world, occupational safety and health professionals behind the scenes, we're just shaking our heads, and it doesn't make any sense, and it makes us really wonder what is going on. Because a year ago, OSHA would be citing for employers for exactly what they're doing right now. Now, OSHA is running around ignoring all of this, and they're just writing citations for people for just not putting a mask on. I mean, it's crazy. So when I bring this out and I try to expose some of this stuff to the public, I get really attacked. Like I don't know what I'm talking about, and I'm making this up, and I'm just a mad scientist or crazy rogue, whatever. And that is not what is going on. I've been doing this for many years, and everybody in my profession is saying the same thing. So one of the things you need to understand about why you're seeing a lot of health professionals say, doctors and nurses say, well, I work in a surgical mask all day, and that's not true. I don't have a problem with it. Because they don't understand that surgical room that they're working in, those hospital rooms, actually have additional airflow to make up for the fact that they're working with their mouth and nose covered. Most of them don't even realize it. And I've come in and had to do those tests in those rooms to make sure. I mean, we have air change rates, we have ventilation rates for infectious disease control. So we have room pressure control. So the room either needs to be positive or negative pressure, depending on whether we're trying to keep the pathogen in or out. And that's been a lot of what I've dealt with on my construction projects. This room has to be negative air pressurized, or we've got to be running negative air. We're having additional oxygen airflow in this room, not so much in this room. The exchange rates are not the same in this room. So then we've also got to have a very precise temperature and humidity controlled room so that we keep that whole micro environment at very precisely controlled, so we keep the oxygen rates up. For the doctors and nurses who are wearing surgical masks, they need additional oxygen in that room. We keep the pathogens and the diseases at bay, so it's a sterile environment. So the surgical mask that they're wearing, it just prevents, transmission if somebody coughs or sneezes, those large droplets of water or mucus that could be carrying a pathogen, right? But it is already a sterile environment, and they're being given additional oxygen, so they're safe. The mask that they're wearing, it just protects the patient from any coughing or, sputtering, whatever, sneezing, anything like that. So when doctors and nurses tell you, because I've seen some people get on my posts and say, this is, BS. I wear a mask all day and I've done my own oxygen testing and it's perfect. I have no problem. I have no oxygen decrease levels. Well, they don't probably even understand that's because they're working in a room with a very precisely controlled O2 level, additional O2, and higher airflow levels to make up for the fact that they're working in a mask. So yeah, good. I'm glad that your O2 levels are good. It's supposed to be. It's been very scientifically calculated. This is what we work with HVAC contractors on, to make sure that the HVAC equipment in that room has the proper airflow and all of that. Most medical professionals have no clue, because they're not involved in that. So for a doctor or a nurse to get up there and tell you, this is a bunch of BS, we work in a mask all day, it's not a big deal, well, they're totally outside of their lane. It would be no different than me coming in and saying, well, yeah, I've got a lot of medical training. I know the body, I know virology, I know immunology, I know a lot about the physiology of the body, I know emergency medicine, so I think I'm going to do the surgery today because I know medicine. I mean, how crazy is that? I'm not licensed to do that. And you know what? These doctors, they're not certified and licensed like I am. They don't know what I know. So how can they be the PPE expert? It just doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't make any sense to any of us in this field. Why are we not hearing from more experts? Why are we only hearing from one doctor? One just group of professionals. It's not even a varied team. We're hearing from Dr. Fauci, from Dr. Birx, and that's it. And guess what? That's a total conflict of interest, because Dr. Fauci is partners and buddies with who? Bill Gates, who has a patent on the coronavirus. Dr. Fauci is very financially invested in the vaccine. And so I really, truly, as I watch all of this, and I've seen a lot of this behind the scenes, I've really connected some of the dots, and I've seen that this is a total conflict of interest to have some of these people be the only people, be the voice to all of us of what we have to do. And so it's absolutely crazy that there's not a variety of experts in these fields to tell you that what you should do as far as, PPE, masks, things like that. It doesn't make sense. We should ask questions and we should demand answers. And that's what we're doing with Stand Up Michigan. That's why some of the House bills that we've presented already for transparency, requiring the governor to provide the data. We all hear her talk about it all the time, the data, the science. Well, yeah, where is that data and that science? Because the data and the science that I know tells me that what you're telling me to do is completely wrong. So who are you relying on? Why don't you have experts like me on your team from our industry? Because what I'm telling you is covering your mouth and nose does literally nothing to protect you from getting this virus or anybody around you from getting it from you. In addition, I want to talk about the health risks for kids because we're going back to school.
Okay, now I'm going to put this on pause and I'm going to break it down in layman's terms. When she had mentioned HVAC contractors, I'm not a contractor, but I've been in, HVAC for 17 years. So you have a lot of contractors out there that are selling what's called HEPA brand filters, and you only have to change it once every 6 months. It blocks out 99.9% of airborne, bacteria. But anything that blocks out 99.9% of airborne allergens also restricts air from the air conditioner, which will cause the air conditioner to increase its runtime by 50%, causing your electric bill to reach like an all-time high. So you don't want a HEPA filter that's going to basically cause your air conditioner to stress itself out. Once that compressor starts to overheat because it's working too hard, the oil inside the compressor gets really acidic and it starts doing internal damage to the compressor. Now, you also don't want to use a cheap filter. Now, what I'm explaining with the cheap filter is kind of what she's saying with these breathable masks. So if you walk into a store and you buy the cheapest filter you can buy, there's little, it almost looks like spider web material, the blue spider web material. Next time you do that, I want you to hold it over the sink and I want you to pour salt on it. Dirt particles are smaller than salt particles, and if you dump the salt on top of this filter and then shake the filter, you'll notice the salt grains will fall through to the bottom. So if salt is getting through that filter, airborne allergens, dirt, microbial growth is also getting through that filter. That's what she's explaining with this mask. The face masks you guys are wearing are not doing anything because the COVID-19 virus is so small it's going right through your fucking mask. But your mask is restricting air from your lungs. You're breathing recycled CO2 all day long. You're causing your heart, which would be your compressor, to work too hard. Is that making sense to you guys? So take your fucking masks off and start fighting back. Start asking questions. Start, there's an agenda behind all this, and you guys aren't seeing it. But there is an agenda. Share this video 10 times a day on every goddamn social media that you are a part of. Start asking questions. There's an agenda behind all this, and you guys are all falling victim to it. You guys are all just like, you're going right along with this. And you're not questioning what the fuck is really going on. I walk out in public and all I see is people running around wearing masks. I refuse to wear a mask. I refuse to. It's not going to do anything except hurt you. So they've basically convinced the entire United States of America to do something harmful to their own health. And everybody, without questioning it, just throws on a mask and walks around all day and works in masks all day long. Places like Walmart, if the employees got together, because Walmart mandates the employees wearing masks, if they all got together and threw these OSHA laws in their face with a civil rights attorney, not to mention a fucking criminal attorney, they could win a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit against Walmart if people just stood up together and started fighting back.